Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of our virtual global leadership podcast, where we deep dive into the realms of mindfulness, personal growth, and professional success. Today, we have the pleasure of introducing you to the remarkable individual Div. Div embodies the essence of mindfulness and simplicity, believing wholeheartedly in the power of authenticity. With a passion for empowering individuals to embrace their true selves, she brings a wealth of experience and wisdom to our discussion. Throughout her career spanning over a decade, Div has been at the forefront of B2B SaaS product marketing, both in startups and Fortune 500 technology companies. Collaborating seamlessly with product sales and marketing teams, she has honed her expertise in driving growth and innovation. But Div's impact extends beyond the corporate world. As a mentor and expert in residence, she has earned recognition as one of the top 100 product marketing influencers by the Product Marketing Alliance. Today, we will explore Dave's insights on career growth, authentic leadership, mindfulness, mental well being, and navigating the complexities little bit on product marketing. Join us as we delve into her journey, uncovering valuable lessons and practical strategies for finding balance and fulfillment in both work and life. Hi, Dev. How are you?
Hi, Sagar. I'm doing great, and thank you for having me. This is a true pleasure.
Wonderful, Dev. So, Dev, I'm curious to know what comes to your mind when you hear the term future of work.
Future of work reminds me of a lot of things, and if I were to forecast the future of work, I would want it to be mindful.
So, so, what makes you, be a mindfulness practitioner or a well-being practitioner?
I will go back to 2020, right before the pandemic kicked in. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, and I didn't know what that meant, but I was determined to figure it out and help others. And that was my first path into stumbling into mindfulness. I came across a few books by Thich Nhat Hanh, and even though I've never met him in person, I would like to consider him as my guru and my teacher who has guided me, who has given me the sense of being in the here and now, to really be fully present. I was really good at multitasking, doing a million things at once, and I was on an information overload, sensory overload, whatever you want to call it, and that was not really good for my anxiety. And so when I took mindfulness to heart and to my soul, it helped me create the space that I needed to simplify my life, to simplify my thinking, everything. Like I think I've fundamentally become an essentialist, right? Not a minimalist. I've become an essentialist because I'm really asking the question every day when I wake up: what do I want to do today to do something that really matters, right? That truly, truly matters. And I don't think I had that perspective before 2020. So that has been my onset and my start. And now I'm just sharing my learnings, whether it's mindfulness at work or mindful eating. I just published a book on some of my food and recipes and different things. So a lot of my writing and my books have been part of that journey. So my first book was in December 2021, where I shared about my stress and anxiety. I called it a broken teacup because that's pretty much how I felt like it. But I love the Japanese version of kintsugi, right, where you're bringing the value even though it's broken. And so that's how I stumbled upon mindfulness, and it is going to be there with me for life.
Wonderful, Dev. I'm curious to know, uh, when you say information overload, or
Mm-hmm.
when you say, anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
how does one understand? It's one thing to be to just go through the whatever pain or dissatisfaction, and one
Mm-hmm.
thing is to recognize and act upon it. So
Yeah.
how can one recognize these patterns in their life?
I I would say please don't do it the way I had to, because my body was giving me all the signs. I was having a lot of discomfort, but I just didn't know what it was. I would keep going to the doctor. Doctor was like, "Oh, you're very healthy." Like I was physically fit, but something internally wasn't working, and I had blackouts. I had moments in time where my stomach would just cramp up, and I'd be like, I'm going to die. Like literally, that was the moment, right? And I didn't know that that was anxiety. I didn't know that it was the stress that I'd created, right? Like as a leader, we are often told just suck it up and do it. That's what is expected of you as a leader. And I didn't have anybody to tell me, hey, it's okay to be not okay. So I kept going through the motions, 2018, 2019, doing all the things that I was expected to do. I was on an autopilot, if that resonates with you. And I realized that I was not doing okay, but I just didn't know what to do about it, right? So I would ask you to pay attention to how you're feeling, because in the corporate workspace that we're in, we don't really have a space for that. We all want to talk about well-being and all the good things, but we have to create and foster an environment to make that happen. And when I so 20 December 2021, I had taken some break. I was like, I really have to pay attention to myself because I had a blackout. I scarred my face, and I was like, this is the ultimate sign your body can give you. Just listen to it and give it the time it needs to heal, right? You're going through something. This is important for you. So I took the time. That's where I stumbled upon mentoring, and I was like, this is fulfillment for me. This is my ikigai. This is what I was born to do. And it never felt like work for me, right? So finding that balance was important. And so when I came back to the workforce in October 2023, I really asked the question, okay, I have done a lot of things. I have had opportunities to lead teams, grow teams, to really bring that empathy into the forefront. But at the same time, if I'm not empathetic to myself and if I'm not taking the time to take care of myself, I cannot help my team. I cannot help my company. I cannot help my community, right? So that's, I think, where the direction is going, and where I would really like the future of work and everything that we are doing with the World Happiness Foundation and even the Chief Wellbeing Program. That's what I'm looking for, right? How can we create those environments where everybody feels safe to say that, okay, this is how it is, and this is not viable or not sustainable, and have those conversations, because they are difficult conversations, but they're much needed today. And I know San Mateo County has announced loneliness as one of a health emergency, right? So there's so much movement that's happening around us, and I don't think you or I could be any more fortunate to be at this moment where we can make that change happen and not just sit back and say, yeah, it's somebody else's problem, but I want to make that change happen myself.
Wonderful, wonderful, Dev. So, I am also curious to know how are you wearing the several hats or a portfolio that you manage about for yourself as well as for others? Can you just give a brief about it?
Sure. Yeah. So I always like to describe myself as I'm a mentor and an explorer. The explorer is my wild card because I've realized that there are different parts of me that needs different outlets, right? So I'm a creative person. I love to travel. I love food. I love to capture photos of flowers, or any part of nature for that matter. And you'll usually see me on Unsplash, or I have my own YouTube channel where I curate some of these videos. So that's one form of my portfolio, if you will. The other part is the mentoring and the teaching that I do, which has been my fulfillment. It has been my purpose in life, if you will. And there are plenty of books out there, right, from Untethered Soul by Michael Singer to um, Thich Nhat Hanh's like Savor. All of those teach you the essence of what it means to feel grateful, to wake up every day and actually make the day something that is valuable. So along with that, product marketing is something that I embrace. I think it has become a part of me for a decade now, and it is a part of my identity, but it is not the only thing. So I'm creating this portfolio so that I get a sense of all the different things, right? As much as I said, I don't multitask, I single task, but all of these are what makes me me. And before, I always struggled because on LinkedIn, you have to show your professional phase, and you have all these different facets of your life that you're trying to create. And now I'm like, that whole thing is me. So whenever I go in for an interview or for a team introduction, I bring that whole self. And that is that authenticity that I'm trying to embrace, right? For me, authenticity is being my true self. And if I can be my true self, and if I feel comfortable sharing my stories and my struggles, I have seen that my team is also confident and comfortable sharing that, right? So it's giving everybody the level field and respecting everyone, because at the end of the day, we are all human, right? If we don't give ourselves a space, it's going to be a struggle, and we'll feel like we are putting on a mask, right? Like literally putting on a mask. And I don't think anybody wants to put on a mask. I think we've all seen that in the past few years, where we didn't like being behind the mask. So why do we do that today, whether we do have it figuratively or literally?
Absolutely, Dev. You touched a very important point. Even I am, let's say, in that phase of my life where I do multiple work. I
Mm-hmm.
love hosting podcasts, and I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
it for last 9 months. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to learn about new things, topics such as global well-being or future
Mm-hmm.
of work. And in my view, peer-to-peer learning is the fastest way of building your
Oh.
knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
skills, and network. The other hat, again, I am also in a way uh, supporting, mentoring, coaching early stage startups.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also love to go travel the world, spend time with my wife, go out, with friends. And I find it also difficult. How do I put myself on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn
Mm-hmm.
or wherever, if I'm going to a, let's say, an event where they will just take up the particular, let's say, skill, and they will just put that.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for touching that, because it made me reflect on that. And I would like to know more from you, from the product, let's say, lens,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
how we as products,
Yeah.
how
Mm-hmm.
we uh, what are some of the ways in which we bring out the authentic self in public, or for that matter,
Absolutely.
anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I love the question, because I think, and I have this conversation with my mentees every day, right? Everyone's like, hey, so how do I, like, everybody gets a question, tell me a little bit about yourself. And so I came across a concept called a picture perfect introduction, or which I coined it as the picture perfect introduction, where in a one visual slide, put all the photos, images, visually, how do you want to represent yourself, right? Very little words, but visually, what does that look like? And the moment I was able to do that, it became a process for me to do a lot of self reflection. It became me uncovering who is Div outside of that spectrum, right? So that's what I would encourage. Like, take the time to, and I'll share some links in the chat as well, right? This is how you can think about telling your story in a picture perfect way. And for me, that story started off with my education, my work experience, my travel. And then now it's morphed into a little bit of everything, and maybe even simplifying that, right? Sometimes that information overload we were talking about, how much information is too much. And so you start distilling it down to the true essence. And I think that's where I am right now. I started that process 2018. So I'm like over 5+ years, but it's a process that gives me a way to represent myself. Like, you see butterflies around in my home, and everybody who knows me knows that I am a butterfly lover. So I tell that I gravitate towards flowers for that reason, because it is a representation of who I am. And so finding that story, and I've had this exercise with my teams where everybody, I had a team of 25 at a point in time, and everyone created their own picture perfect introductions. And I had one of my team members tell me, Div, I worked with these people for over 5 years. It's the first time I actually got to see them outside of the job title. And I felt so much gratitude for them to say that, because that was what it is, right? At the end of the day, we are all humans, and the team is everywhere. Like, it's not like we're going to be in one location, one place. So I had teams in North America, in South America, in EMEA, in Asia Pacific. But this little activity brought us all together, because we saw we all had same values. We all saw that we loved the beach, we loved nature, like whatever it was. And just grounding ourselves to be human, I think that's what it all comes down to. And that's why I'm a big believer of well-being, because it's not a fancy word or the next buzzword, right? It is actually paying attention to how you're doing today, and what is making you happy. And that's what I've been trying to uncover over the past 4 years, right? What is making me happy, and whatever is making me happy, how can I kind of cultivate that? How can I create environments? So my creativity, my travel, the foodie in me, all of that is what makes me happy. And um, on my own pursuit of happiness, as we say in the United States. It's a one of our freedom rights, right? So might as well make it count. That's what I'm chasing right now. Sagar, you're on mute.
Thank you.
You're
Just a
welcome.
quick question,
Mhm.
which is slightly out of context. When you saw my LinkedIn profile, what were the first few things that came to your mind?
That you are a believer in people. That's one thing that came in mind. Outside of everything else that you've done, I loved your 33 years of your time in the world and how you kind of broke it down into what really mattered for you. So I appreciated that, and that's one of the reasons why I reached out.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because usually, because you answered that, I was like, no, no, I have to ask her. It's also on air. I will ask.
Yeah, of
Thank you,
course.
thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Dev, what advice you have for uh, leaders who are or are just, I would say, sorry for the lack of better, but I have to use it. They're
Hmm?
drowned in the number game, the number crunching game. What advice you
Everybody is drowned in it.
have?
That's one of the reasons why I look back to my values, right? So for me, it's trust and credibility, right? For me, I should be able to build that trust, no matter whether I'm starting a new job or whether I'm connecting with my mentee or with my students. It's building that credibility. The second is extreme ownership, right? So if I'm saying I'm going to do something, I'm going to own it to the whole, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But the third is where I think comes back to your question. It's results and relationships. When I look back at my decade of experience, whether it's been at startups or Fortune 500 companies, it's not the numbers that come to me. As great as those numbers were, the number is not what I wake up for. And I know that is not a great answer for any corporate being, but the reason why I wake up is the people that I work with, right? It's the relationships. And every time, like I look at my LinkedIn and I feel proud because I have over 100 recommendations on there. And I've made it like a practice, right? I have said, hey, if I've had an impact on someone's lives, I want to capture it. That is my treasure. I'm not taking
Hmm.
the money in the bank to the grave, but these recommendations, these kindful thoughts that people have shared of the impact that I've had in their lives is what I carry forward. And I've been very fortunate to have the support system, right? So when I told you about that 2020, when I was going through anxiety, when I stumbled upon mindfulness, we had this Zen program that I was part of, and we had a team of 4 people, right? We had these small groups, and the group became my accountability, right? Like I was struggling, I was in knee deep into, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Everything seems to be going wrong. I'm putting all these guardrails. I'm creating this mindful calendar. I'm being very systematic because I need that systematicness to help with my anxiety. If I don't know what my day is going to be like, it's like a haywire in my head, right? And so if people appreciate how organized I am, but they don't realize that if I'm not organized, it impacts my anxiety, right? So figuring out what those numbers mean for you. So I'm not driven by numbers, but I'm driven by the impact that I can have, right? So if I get to work with really amazing people and we are collaborating and doing all these awesome things, the numbers will show up eventually. The numbers will play out the way it's supposed to. But if within the company you have constant tension and friction and everybody is saying one thing in a meeting and doing the complete opposite behind you, it breaks you down. And that's what broke me down, right? The reason why I had to take those drastic steps, because I loved the work that I was doing, I loved the people that I was working with, but somewhere along the way, with shifts in leadership and everything, it broke down. And I was struggling because I could see everybody else in pain, and I'm a very empathetic person. I absorb the stress and anxiety that is in the environment, and it's ironical, right? Like there was one team where we were all remote, but I could feel the stress and anxiety in the environment, even though we were remote, and that broke me down. That led me to my blackout, and I just couldn't figure out how I could help these folks, right? And I think that's what it comes down to. Like as much as the numbers exist, look for what is it that is driving you to wake up every morning. Trust me, 100% nobody's waking up for those numbers, but you're waking up to do something more impactful, to create change, to do something that matters to you. And that's what I would guide everyone. Like really pay attention to how you're feeling. And If you don't feel like the work environment is a safe space to have that conversation, have a mentor. That's why I do what I do, right? I'm creating that safe space for people to brainstorm, for me to share my struggles, so that they can feel like, okay, they're not in this by themselves, they're not alone, that together we can solve it. And I've been very fortunate to share and help folks navigate through that. So that's what I would guide you all, to really pay attention to how your body is telling you. I have this hunch that the reason why we have all these diseases is because we're holding back and trying to just absorb it. I always tell that I let all the feelings and the stress and anxiety and everything just layer in so deep that eventually the pressure cooker just burst. That's what I describe my blackout to be. So pay attention to how you're feeling, and it matters. It's not something nebulous. It is something that is very fundamental, and I'm fortunate to be healthy the way I am, because I'm like, the things that the doctor said don't eat, I can eat all those things now because I really paid attention to how my health is, how my mental well-being is. And I'm not afraid to share that because I want to break the stigma. There's so much stigma around it, and especially coming from where I am, it's even hard to have that conversation. And that's why I wanted to be a voice for the unspoken, and why I share my stories with you all today.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Div, you also do a lot of work with respect to career coaching. So,
Mhm.
would you like to share some thoughts there? And we are living in a world where people want to pursue their passion, their dreams. At the same time, they get bored in 1 to 2 years of doing same work.
Mhm.
They want new challenges. And after, like, say, after 5 7 years, they have done everything. Now they are wondering, where should I head? Where should I go? Which specialization should I take? So I'm sure you would be immersed with these questions, but yes, people are seeking answers.
I won't say that I have all the answers, but I can share what has been working for me. In 2018, I came across a TED talk by John Doerr about OKRs, and he said that the success is in defining the right OKRs. And as much as I applied it into my product marketing work, I was like, oh, I like this idea. I'm going to see if I can create my own personal OKRs. And at that point in time in my career, it was all about the leadership growth, right? So what will it take for me to go from to be a director to be the next VP, whatever it is, right? That was my path. I quickly realized that that was not the path for me, and so in 2020 I pivoted and created what I call my community OKRs, right? I wanted to give back. So I literally had a goal because I didn't have any baseline number. I said, I want to mentor 10 mindful, passionate souls, whether it's career or life, whatever it could be. That year, I was able to mentor about 20 people. And I was like, oh, maybe there is something that I can offer back to this community and to the world. And so I started doing this as a practice every year. So towards after Thanksgiving, towards the end of the year, I sit down, I do a reflection. I look at what do I want my 2024 to be. 2023, I wrote down and said, I want to mentor and travel the world. I didn't know what that meant or what that was going to look like, but I was able to do it. I was able to travel. I was able to continue my mentoring. I was in Europe and Portugal for 2 months. I was in the UK for 2 months. And I'm now back in the San Francisco Bay Area. It is that intention, that focus. Once you put it down on paper and once you create that accountability, right? I need accountability in whatever shape or form that I do, right? So that became my accountability, that I told the world that this is what I want to do and I'm going to make it happen, right? So find what that is, and you are setting yourself up for growth, whether it's in your career, whether it's in your life. And that practice is what I call being present, right? Being aware that this is something you want to do and then practicing it for life. If you have something like that, trust me, every year you will create your own new challenges. So this year, one of the challenges I created last year when I was in the UK with my sister and her family, we started swimming lessons. I was like, I love the water, but I've always been afraid of swimming. So now, where I am, I'm fortunate to have a saltwater pool next in this apartment building. And I'm like, every day I'm going to wake up and 10 minutes. I'm not going to put any crazy number where I feel like, oh, I don't have the time in the day to do it. So 10 minutes of swimming, 15 minutes if I can. And that's it. I am at day 28. I started this in January. There are some days I do it, some days I don't, which is okay. But it is a practice that I'm putting in, right? Often you say after 21 days, it becomes a habit. So I'm looking at bringing that into my day to day. So there are a few things like that that I bring. Like I wanted to learn languages. So I've been learning Spanish for over a couple years here and there. Then when I went to Portugal, I was like, oh, I was learning the wrong language. So now I need to learn Portuguese. So I started picking up Portuguese on Duolingo. And then in August, September, I was like, just learning these two languages is boring for me, weirdly enough. And at that point, I was watching some Korean TV shows, and I was like, oh, I want to learn Korean. And so I started combination. So I had Spanish and Portuguese, Korean and Japanese, and then French and Italian, because why not? I don't know why. So I have a rotating of 6 languages every day after I'm done from work. It's my practice. So every day it's my wind down routine for the day. I will sit with these 6 lessons, finish them, and then get to my cooking or my dinner, whatever I need. Right. So you can challenge yourself. Don't wait for the environment to challenge you, or wait for, and this is something that I've learned, right? Like over time I realized that I don't have to wait for the work to create those opportunities for me to learn more, and for me to get bored and be like, oh, the work is not enough. That is why I do all these things that I do, like Sagar mentioned, right? I host podcasts, I do teaching, I do mentoring, because all of that is what gets me excited every day, not one thing by itself. And I cannot do just one thing by itself. That's just not me. And so figuring out what that is, and then creating some form of these OKRs will always give you the space that you need for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, thank you for sharing that. One other area where, from geopolitics
Mm-hmm.
to our respective homes,
Mm-hmm.
we, in a way, we are living in a world where people are surrounded by people,
Mm-hmm.
and then there is so much of stress in relations. Look at the way, uh, the divorce rates have gone up over the,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, interestingly, in India also it's doubled in the last 10 years. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just giving one data point,
Yeah.
but then not two brothers or sisters or whatever parents, they are not sharing that bond. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think, I'm sure mindfulness is a gateway to access and in fact improve that those relations also. So what are your thoughts there? And then, of course, this is the first part of the question.
Mm-hmm.
Then I have the second question, but please, I would love your thoughts there.
Sure. Yeah. So being a divorcee myself, I can definitely embody the sentiment, and that was another part of the stigma that I had to navigate through in the past few years, is getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, because in society we haven't created the space for it, right? Me and my ex-husband, we knew this wasn't working, and we were comfortable to make that shift, just so that we could figure out what happiness meant for both of us. And it's okay to grow apart. Don't just be miserable in that and think that, oh, I don't have a choice, that I cannot do something with about it. So we made that choice, and I think the hardest part was helping my parents see, right? Because we are still good best friends, we still stay in touch, but marriage just didn't work out, and it's okay. Sometimes we think, oh, no, no, we have to put up with it, or there are outside factors that are beyond our control. But the reality is, everything is within our own control, and we should be able to make those decisions, whichever path makes sense for us, right? Similarly with family and bonding, that's something that I've personally struggled with a lot. We are not um, great communicators at times, and I'm learning to have a voice, because I've always been the quiet one, the one that will be like, you tell me what you need me to do and I'll do it. And I've never actually asked, what do I want, or what will make me happy, or anything like that, because I've been conditioned to just see how everybody else does everything else, and think that that's the answer and that's the way it has to be, right? So figuring that part out, and just really seeing people as people, right? Like for me, with my parents, I've always been like, oh, why can't we be this way? Or like I see other families and others, and I'm like, why can't we be that way? But then once I really started to understand, maybe it is part of age, right? When you grow up, you realize what your parents have gone through. And I was fortunate enough to spend a year with them in the past year, and I could actually see them as my parents and as human beings, and be like, I had put all these I don't know, the fancy, like, fairy tale kind of scenarios, but at the end of the day, we're all trying to do our best. We're all trying to help each other be our best. And once I created that space, I saw them in a whole different light, and I got to know so much about them than I ever had in the 40 years that I've lived this life, right? Like that, I think, was the biggest part. And share how you're
Yeah.
feeling, right? We often think, oh no, we have, like, I always was like, oh, I have to be the good girl. I shouldn't ruffle the feathers or create any trouble. I just want to be the people pleaser. And the people pleaser didn't really work for me. So now I'm learning to be that voice and to share how I really feel versus saying, oh no, I don't want to trouble them, so I'm just going to keep it up to myself. And the anxiety gave me the chance to break open, if that makes sense, and
Mhm.
really pay attention to what is troubling me within. And I think that that was the big moment for me, for sure. So I appreciate the question because I don't think I've addressed this anywhere. So thank you, Sagar, for that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just following the cues that you're giving me, and that is helping me ask you few questions. And the
Absolutely.
part B of the same topic is that,
Hmm.
Dev, I'm sure you understand specific, let's say, to India.
Hmm.
It's just a saying that people work for 8 hours. People actually work for 12 hours.
Hmm.
If you
Hmm.
see the IT
Hmm.
sector, okay,
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
could be true in the US as well,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
in some of the other countries now. No, where people are actually spending a lot of time with their peers and their, let's say, their circle. And
Mm-hmm.
workplace well-being, I feel, in this the times we live in, I would rate slightly higher than the other relations we have. Now, what are some of the challenges, and how to address those challenges? What are your thoughts there?
I would really caution us to pay attention to what does well-being mean in the workplace, right? So 2020, once I was able to get out of the troubles that I had with anxiety and really embrace who I am, be my authentic self, and say I don't have to wear a mask or be like somebody. I've seen leaders in different shapes and forms. I've been very fortunate to have a fearless leader myself who embodied the essence of authenticity, and was the reason why I wrote my second book, right, about fearless, be the leader you will follow. I wanted to start with one mindful moment a day, right? So I do a 2 minute mindfulness practice, and it was something that helped me and my team connect at that root level. Whenever I teach a class, I'll start with that 2 minute mindfulness practice because everybody is moving from one meeting to the other. How can we just ground ourselves? And 2 minutes is a safe space, right? 20 minutes feels too long, 2 minutes doable. At the worst, you can go grab a cup of coffee and come back, and the 2 minutes will be gone. So that's what I try to do. So I take this practice of one day at a time. What can I do today? And if today didn't work out the way it should, it's okay. Tomorrow's a new day, right? So bringing that into the workplace and creating that environment, right? Oftentimes we talk about burnout and all the challenges that we've gone through, right? It's sometimes too scary, right? Like, I know I have gone through burnout. I know a lot of my mentees and students have shared their stories of burnout, but we're just expected to go, 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 right? This always on kind of a mode, and it doesn't help anybody. So if we can think about holistic health, which is what we are talking about in the Chief Wellbeing Program, and it's amazing to see the work that the US Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, has done, right? To create that sense of worker voice and equity, right? We often talk about DEI and equity, but I think this is the essence of equity. How can we create a space where there is connection, where there is work life harmony, where what you do at work matters, right? I'm a big believer that whether you do 6 hours of work or whether you do 12 hours of work, it doesn't matter. I
Mhm.
am I've created a discipline. Like, if you look at my calendar, it's 8 to 4. That's my work schedule, right? In between that, I have my 1 hour lunch break. Before, I was so good at giving away my lunch break. I would be eating my lunch and having a meeting at the same time, doing neither of them effectively, right? So little practices like that will make a difference. And I have 1 hour that I have blocked off that is called Walk to Remember, because I know it is important for my mental well being. And I'm
Mhm.
making that conscious choice to say, whatever needs to get done in that 8 hours, I can actually do it in 6 hours. But
Mhm.
I'm focused. I have the clarity at that point in time. I'm not doing 10 things at once, switching, context switching, right? And there's a lot of research that shows that every time we have that context switch, somebody pings you, right? My biggest struggles when I came back to the workforce was the Slack notifications. That ping, 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 ping. It got to me. And I was like, I need to turn that sound off. I need to get to the Slack only when I'm ready for it, not let it control my day. Because every time that happens, and I don't know if it is disruptive for others, but it is very disruptive for me because the work that I do in product marketing needs a lot of that focus, and like I need block of time. So I have focus times in my calendar, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening that I've put in, and the rest of it I give for meetings, right? I don't want my day to be just meetings. And then I look back at the weekend, like, where do I have time to do the work? So I'm very intentional in my calendar. If I need to do some work and if I need to adjust my day, I will. But how do you practice it and how do you make sure that others see it the same way? So I'm grateful that we have a transparent calendar so everybody can see where Div is at what point in time. We have a hybrid work environment, which helps me have the flexibility. When I need to work from home, I can. And when I want to go to the office, I can. I don't think everybody has that luxury, right? So creating those environments and making it easy to have the essentials for workplace mental wealth, health, and well-being is all it is.
Wow. So, Dev, can you just quickly share how your day looks like?
I start off my day just like today. I have a mentee session. So it is I call it my full battery charge, a 30-minute mentee session in the morning. So my 7 to 8, I usually give for mentoring or teaching. Then my 8 to 4 is for my work. And 4 to 5, it's again mentoring. So since I cover global, my mornings are usually for Europe and Asia. My evenings are for the US and Americas. And it is how I want to live my life, right? Like I don't want to look back. And this is another great exercise. I think Vivek Vadva, professor, had an exercise where it was a self-reflection, and he had one prompt every day, and this is one that I'll share as well.
Sure.
One prompt was look back when you are, his was 90 years. I was like, I can't think 90 years, but I can do 50. So I did 50 years and look back, and what is it that you are seeing when you're at that point in time? And for me, it was the connections, right? So this year, when I created my OKRs, I said, it's about connection, it's about synergy, and it's to continue to be fearless, right? Like that fear in me is always there. Like I was just like the swimming example, I was always afraid. But how do you kind of create something? And this is why I say the synergy part is so fascinating, because ever since I put that word in my January self-reflection and my OKRs, I've had so many opportunities to connect with amazing people like you. And it's only February and I've already had 5 so far. So I cannot wait to see how the year is going to unfold, but that's what it is, right? It's setting the intention. And there are lots of books that talk about it. So I'll share even the 21 books that have shaped who I am over the past year as well.
So the reason why I asked you your schedule is
Hmm.
just to kind of get an insight into, as you said, 7 to 8, you start, let's say, mentoring. So which means
Hmm.
that you are up by 5:30 or 6, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then 7 to 8, then 8 to 4. Now in that 8 to 4, like
Hmm.
how does your, let's say, the creative time or the maintenance time,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
how you break up that, this will help our
Yeah.
viewers understand, because
Absolutely.
you're doing so many things, right? You're wearing multiple hats. So that
Hmm.
was the context. And then how do you cool off, and then by
Hmm.
what time you're off to bed, and what is the process
Hmm.
before you follow before going off to bed, because
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
also, I think, is important. So
It
this
is.
just to
It is.
that.
No, no. I love the question, and that is something that I've been trying to embody as part of that essentialism, right? So, thinking about well-being, not just about work or life, but holistically, what does that look like? So for me, that 8 to 4, like I mentioned, right, I have that 1 hour block for lunch. I have 1 hour blocked off for walk to remember, because I can do focused work for a couple of hours. So like I have 2 hours blocked off in the morning. Then I'll have my have a 1 hour blocked off for work meetings, and then make sure that I have the time for everything like the creative part. So I'm really good in that morning where I can do the focus work. So I try to keep my mornings clear as much as I can. But there will always be times where you have meetings. So don't beat yourself up if that is the case. I did before, but now I'm learning to be a little flexible, and create room and create space so that I can add or remove things as needed. But then once I'm done with that 4 o'clock, I'll have maybe 1 or 2 mentor sessions, and then it's that wind down, right? So the Duolingo that I mentioned. So I'll do a 15-20 minutes of Duolingo, wrap it up, start cooking, because cooking now became therapy for me. I never liked cooking before, but now that I realize I need to learn to cook for myself, I started to embrace cooking to really find the essence of it. I'm not a big fan of trying to put a lot of spices. So the cookbook that I put out was part a thank you to my mom for bringing cooking into our lives, and a birthday gift for her. But it was also my way of understanding what is holistic and like good food eating, right? It's appreciating the fruits that you have, the vegetables that you have, and taking that balanced meal option, that the balanced plate, right? Half veggies, one fourth carb, one fourth protein, because that's not how I grew up in India. It was maybe one half carbs and then everything else, whatever little bit you had. So
Two-third.
learning, yeah, learning that and changing that actually helped me with my well-being. Like I know that my body is thankful for those shifts that I've made in my life, and I know it's working, right? So it's finding those things. And then after, so that's 2 hours, and I literally have on my work calendar out of office dinner like 2 hours blocked off, so that, because we work in a global workforce, so sometimes we might have to have a meeting in the evening. We do have sometimes analyst briefings that are at 6:30 p.m. my time, because that is somebody who we are talking to in India, right? So having that flexibility and knowing what you need to fit in where gives you the chance to create that. So those are things that I've tried. For me, reading has been a new practice since I started in 2020. Before that, I maybe barely read because I was too busy. I was like, I didn't have time to read. Now I've taken away that information overload with the TV and stuff. So I have the time to read. So I have a goal that I've set. And this is when you talk about challenges, right? I have 100 books a year that I want to read. 2020, I was like, Div, no way are you reading 100 books. You barely read 2 books a year. What are you thinking? But now that this became a practice, every day I spend an hour reading. Compute that over time, you can easily finish a book in a week, right? So it's little things like that. So bringing those things in, I'm off to bed by 8 p.m. because I'm an early riser.
8 p.m.
Yeah, like
Wow.
if I'm exhausted, I'm in bed by 8 p.m. At most, you'll see me 9 p.m., 10 p.m., but not beyond that, right? On my phone, I have a do not disturb after 8 p.m. because I don't want the phone to be the reason why I'm up. And the phone has been plenty of times in my life, been the reason why I've been up, right? But
Yeah.
I do have times when I wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning and I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I awake? I should be going back to sleep. And I can't. And that is the reality. Like I'm learning to get comfortable with, there are certain things that work for me, certain things that I'm still working through. And sleep is one that I'm a big advocate for, right? Matthew Walker, in his book about sleep and why it matters, talks a lot about the circadian rhythm. And through my life, I always thought, why am I always exhausted by 7, 8 p.m.? I never understood it. But it's just the way my body is. My body is up and awake. Like you can ask me to have a session at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. I will do it happily. Ask me to do something at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., you might as well just talk to somebody else, right? So it is little things like that that I am learning about myself and not beating myself up to say, Div, everybody's up. And I've had conversations and been with my friends in the past where people are like, oh, Div's in her phase two sleep because it's 10 p.m. And they're all talking and chit chatting, and I'm like half asleep. And I always thought, what's wrong with me? Now I understand that is just who I am, and I'm comfortable with it, right? So learning about what works for you and then creating, that's why I said like my work schedule works for me. I've had folks tell me, "Oh, that's very rigid. Like I could not function that way." And I'm like, for my anxiety, I need to know exactly how my day is going to plan out. And if somebody throws a last minute meeting onto my schedule, it drives me wonkers. As much as I understand why they're doing it, and if it's urgent and something I need to adjust to, I'll adjust. But if you have many of those coming in, that is sensory overload for me,
Yeah.
right? So learning about that and then being okay with it. Now I'm like and I tell this to everybody. I become a pumpkin after sunset. that, that's something that I am starting to embrace and being like it's okay. If people
Mm,
want to be
yeah.
up till 10 p.m. they can, and they're like, wow, how do you like just like you reacted? How do you sleep at 8 p.m.? I'm
Yeah.
tired. I'll fall asleep and then I'll wake up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. for that matter. But I try to keep it to 5 a.m. That's my like 8 to 5. So I'm kind of following the
Yeah.
8 to 4 schedule throughout my day and night.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Then, what role each one of us as individuals, as teams, as beings on the planet, what are some of the things we should implement to become the voice for global well-being with the pandemic which has gone, with the wars that are happening, with so many things happening, just I can just go
Yeah,
on and
yeah.
on, but I'm
Mhm,
sure
mhm.
the viewers would have got the question when I say wars, right? Because
Yeah. Mhm.
I mean, can't ignore that. And with the layoffs that are happening, I think all of us have some, and I think, and one common passion that we both also share is that, for the global well-being. So I'm really, really excited to know, what each one of us must do, like some of the action steps we must take.
Yeah. I have three principles. Let's maybe start
Mhm.
there, right? So
Mhm.
we all know the acronym CEO. This is an acronym that I think will embody us and how we approach our day to day, right? Uh, C is curiosity, right? Always have that childlike curiosity. Yesterday, I was very fortunate. One of my dear friends reached out and said, "Hey, I'm taking my kids to the movies. Why don't we grab lunch after?" And in my head, I was like, "Are you going to watch the movie, the Disney movie Wish?" And I just asked her, "Hey, what movie are you going to watch?" And she was like, "We're going to watch Wish." And I was like, "Can I join you?" Right? I've always been a Disney fan, and Disney has always given you that sense of hope and
Mhm.
given you that sense of no matter what is going wrong in the world, right will be done in its own way, right? So that curiosity was always there, and I felt like a child watching that movie. And this, I think, it's been 5 or 6 years since I ever even went to the movies or watched anything along those ways. So having that curiosity will allow you to challenge the status quo, to create the space for you to ask, why do we do it this way, right? Whether
Mhm.
it's like I always struggled with layoffs because personally it hurts that we said, hey, we're going to work together as a team, and then because of the numbers we have to make these hard choices. I was fortunate to see how our company approached it and how honest the CEO was in saying we did everything we could and this was the last resort, right? So knowing how these things are going to play out, and I kept asking myself, I've only joined this company like a month and I'm already seeing all these things play out. And I was initially fearful. I was like, okay, I don't know. Today I have a job, tomorrow I might not have a job. And that is the reality of it. Like I'm embracing that. But at the same time, I reached out to the people that I maybe spoke to once in that 1 month, and it's like, hey, I know this is going to be hard for you, but if there's anything I can do to help, please reach out, right? Those are little things that we can do, right? As much as layoffs suck and it creates sort of this, oh, you are the person on this side of the line and you're the person on this, just reach out and extend a hand because we
Mm.
have been there in those spaces. It's not like I've had my own variation. I think my first job, I was impacted with layoff, and it was last in, first out, right? I was a new MBA grad. I came in, this was 2020, 2021. And I was devastated. I was like, I'm doing all the right things, and then this happens. What do I do? I remember walking down to the car parking area and just breaking down, calling my husband at that time and saying, this is what happened. Like, what am I supposed to do? And he was comforting, like he gave me the right guidance. He said, we'll figure it out, right? I knew I had a support system to navigate through it. So if anybody feels like they don't have that support system, just reach out to us. Like, we are here to help. At the end of the day, you shouldn't feel like you have to go through this alone. Like, I'm so fortunate to help so many people. I just recently had one of my mentees that I'd connected in 2020 reach out and say, hey, I've been looking for jobs. I'm constantly getting the rejection. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, let's just navigate through it. Let's look at your resume. Let's do some mock interviews. You get these product
Mm-hmm.
marketing assignments. I'll give you my 2 cents and help you. And she recently responded, said, hey, I got a job offer. And it couldn't have happened if it wasn't for you. And I'm like, I truly believe that people find people at their time and need. And I was very fortunate to have that support system, right? That fearless group that I was telling you about. And that's what it is, right? The E is empathy. It's showing empathy for yourself, showing empathy for your team, for your peers, for everybody in your community. And that's why I love the PMA, because they are just as much family for me as anybody else. And they've given me that sense of belonging, and I'll say the word belonging with a double emphasis, because that is what it is. I've always struggled with, where do I belong? Like, I'm a global citizen for what is good or bad, right? Like, I was born in India, in Calicut, in Kerala, but I grew up in Saudi Arabia. Then I lived in India for a decade, and then I came to the US, and I've been here for over a decade. And for me, that sense of belonging is the world. And I look at all my friends, I look at all the mentees and students and everybody, that the peers that I've connected with, leaders that I've connected with, and everybody is in different parts of the world. But that's the world that we live in. Whatever happens at a micro level or a macro level impacts all of us, whether we realize it or not. And I love the mindfulness practices that we have, right? Where we talk about us, me, then I talk about the other, and I talk about the sense of community and the world. And if we can, like, if I have joy to share, and this is why I do the creative practices, right? The flowers and the photos that I capture, I share on Unsplash, on Instagram, because that is the joy that I just saw, and I want to share that with the world. And if we can bring more of that, I think we are on our track to bring 10 billion happy people by 2050, right? That's what it is. So O is your being open, creating that space. And to create space, you have to take out things, right? Like, it's the whole Mary Kondo concept, but it's, if you fill your day with so many things, you don't have time to breathe. So how do you create the space so you have time to breathe? My walk to remember is that it's, I've done half of my day. Now I need to get through the rest of the day, but how do I create the space to think? Because whether you work 8 to 4 or 8 to 8 or whatever it is, you have to step out to actually think, and creating that space and being open is important. So it's C, curiosity, E, empathy, O, open, right? CEO. And if you can bring those principles, see what works and what doesn't, right? Yes, we are going through a time where war is scary, and I hoped that we wouldn't have to see such times, right? But that is the reality of the world that we live in. But we can connect with those people. I have so many friends and folks that are that have families in those areas, and if we can build that sense of community and belonging, and just listen, right? Like, be there for them. That's all it is. We might not have the right comforting words, just be there for them and say, I'm here. Like, how are you doing? I'm here. Is there anything I can help? That's it, right? That, I think that's what it all comes down to, right? It's, we can talk about well-being all day long, Sagar, but at the end of the day, it's belonging and feeling safe. And safety is a factor. As a woman myself, it is like number one the reason why I am where I am, and it is important for me wherever I go, where I travel, whatever it is, right? So breaking our own boundaries of fear and being fearless at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. Interestingly, I listened to this. I was listening to this mythological pod, not podcast, audio
Mm-hmm.
book on
Mm-hmm.
Mahabharata.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference between bravery and stupidity is what in one of
Mm-hmm.
the chapters he says
Yeah.
that brave are the ones who know the fear, who
Mm-hmm.
understand fear,
Mm-hmm.
and with that understanding, they manage their fear and take action. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
stupidity is just overconfidently being this
Saying
thing.
that.
And
Yeah.
that was like, oh my god. So
It is.
bravery,
It is.
yes, I
And
was like, wow.
there's so much, and it's interesting that you mentioned the Mahabharata because there's so much in the Vedas and everything, right? And I can't remember whose it was, but there's a quote saying, "The war is within us,"
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
want to say it's the Gita, but I could be completely wrong, so I
Yeah,
don't want to
yeah.
misquote something.
No, no,
But
yeah, yeah.
that is the reality, right? The war is within us, and the minute you can be self-aware to do something about it and not be the one on the stupidity side, I think you are reaching. Like I know we talk about um, enlightenment in different aspects, but I don't know. It's beyond that. It's connecting to your own soul, and I am I'm grateful to be connected to my soul. Like I can feel the sense of who I am, where I am, and why I matter. Right? If you have that,
Yeah,
anything you can do anything, and whatever obstacle comes your way, you will navigate through it because you have that sense of belonging. You have that sense of what I do matters, and that's why I'm grateful to my mentees, my students, because they gave me the sense of purpose. I'm nobody without them, right? And
true.
I would have struggled through my anxiety. I had a lot of self confidence issues. I was going through a lot, trying to pick myself up from the rumble, right? And they gave me a sense of purpose, and they gave me a sense of, Div, you are precious, you are important in this world, and what you do in whatever way, like it doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It could just be picking up a phone and reaching out to your friend and saying, hey, how are you doing today, right?
Yeah,
Everybody goes through their own struggles, and not everybody is comfortable sharing that, but I've had so many
yeah.
people open up their hearts and souls to me that I will forever be indebted to them, because we are able to create that safe space for each other, and that's all it is.
Yes, yes. Oh my God, we are just, I mean, I just felt the conversation just started and we're already an hour. Thank you, Dev, for, taking out your valuable time and giving us and sharing valuable insights on multiple topics. We touched upon mental well-being. You shared examples from your life, I think, which is a very brave thing to do because you gave a lot of insights from your life. And I think, people have this habit of just let's say when someone is consuming information, people usually tend to quote examples from the things that are happening, but you were brave enough to share, which I am really happy that you did that, because that also impacts listeners, because then they are thinking, okay, if someone who is there sharing, I am also going through the same, so it's very easy
Mhm.
for them to relate. So thank you, Dave, for doing that, and it's wonderful to connect with you. Thank you, viewers, for joining us for yet another episode of Virtual Global Leadership Podcast. And I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation. Sorry, Dave, it's 10 p.m., but I think post this conversation, I might, work through the morning.
Well,
But
you should, just it's a practice that my IT leader had told me. Like every time you're done with work, just shut down the laptop. I know we have
yeah,
thousands of tabs open. Close everything, and then next day start fresh, because then it gives you a
absolutely.
sense of the space you need. So it was a true pleasure, Sagar. I loved our conversation, and I'm really glad that we got to connect. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Dev.